He just glanced at the photo on the table in the restaurant and became very painful. He wanted to get up and go out for some fresh air, but he broke his lover's necklace and fell straight to the ground. But his lover did not help him up immediately, but stepped over him to pick up the fallen pearls. Accompanied by his favorite music, Gloomy Sunday, the 80-year-old Hans lost his life. As soon as the news came out, media all over the country rushed to report it, and people all over the country also mourned for him spontaneously. Just because he saved more than 1,000 Jews in Budapest by himself during World War II. But only the restaurant owner Laszlo knew that Hans was a devil, so after his body was sent away, the restaurant owner opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate. Then the owner came to the kitchen with 2 glasses of wine and said to the silver-haired woman who was humming Gloomy Sunday and wearing a blue gem hairpin, "Mom wishes you a happy 80th birthday." At this time, the woman was washing the bottle of poison in her hand. This woman is the woman in the photo. She waited for Hans to die for more than half a century. As early as 60 years ago today, Hans came to this restaurant, but the focus at that time was not him, but the woman, Ilona. Ilona's birthday is the same day as Hans's, but one is as beautiful as an angel and has captured the hearts of many men, while the other is a fanatical young man who is about to transform into a demon. That day, Ilona received 3 birthday gifts from 3 different men, among which Hans took a photo of her with a new German-made camera. The restaurant owner is also her lover, and gave her a hairpin inlaid with blue gems, and the restaurant's pianist Andras composed the song Melancholy Sunday for her. The melody of this song is like weeping, as if it brings a person into a holy dark realm, and then whispers something you don't want to hear in your ear. However, you know that these are all true, and you have to stop and listen. This song is Ilona's favorite birthday gift, and her eyes are full of admiration when she looks at Andras. Ilona is the muse in the hearts of almost all men who have seen her. She has many suitors, but before the pianist appeared, Laszlo had never seen such a look in her eyes. Not only that, the shrewd Laszlo also found that Ilona usually takes special care of Andras, and will lie on the piano and whisper to him during the intervals between serving dishes. But Laszlo is a kind person. Although he saw some clues, he did not target Andras. On the contrary, when Laszlo learned that Andras was short of money and couldn't afford a new suit, he generously expressed his willingness to help Andras. In order not to hurt Andras's self-esteem, Laszlo even added that it would not be too late to return the money for the suit to Andras when he made a fortune from music in the future. Now, Laszlo has been dating Ilona for 4 years. It was not until now that he realized that although he lived in Ilona's life, Andras obviously lived in Ilona's soul. After closing that night, the 3 men followed Ilona. Hans took the opportunity to be alone with Ilona first and confessed his love to her. Hans also promised to open the largest import and export company in Germany so that Ilona could live a happy life in the future. But Ilona just smiled and rejected him directly, because for Ilona, who studied music and advocated freedom, Hans's proposal was too worldly, not to mention that in her eyes, Hans was just a stranger who had come to the restaurant to eat a few times. She couldn't go to a strange country with a stranger. Besides, there was already a man she loved here, and after being rejected, Hans could only leave in disappointment. At this time, the remaining 3 people also walked to a fork in the road. After Ilona and Andras kissed goodbye, Ilona was still reluctant to leave. Seeing this, Laszlo did not force Ilona to go home with him, but gave her time alone to let her make a choice according to her heart. Although Laszlo was very generous, when he found out that Ilona finally chose Andras, Laszlo still came to the Danube River sadly. That night, Ilona and the pianist were in love, while Laszlo stood alone on the bridge, looking at the scenery. Suddenly, a sound of falling water broke the silence of the night and interrupted Laszlo's sadness. It turned out that Hans jumped into the river to commit suicide because of love. Fortunately, Laszlo rescued him despite the cold and patiently persuaded him that there is more to this world than love. He should think about other beautiful things. For example, how is Hans's favorite beef roll made? That is to cleverly combine garlic butter and ham. Laszlo said that although these 3 ingredients seem to be unrelated, as long as they are processed together, they can cook harmonious and delicious dishes. These words seem to comfort Hans, but in fact they reveal Laszlo's true thoughts on love. Later, in order to prevent Hans from doing stupid things again, Laszlo took him home. The next day, Laszlo personally sent him to the train back to Germany. Before leaving, Hans told Laszlo very solemnly that Laszlo was his lifesaver, and he would definitely repay Laszlo in the future. But no one expected that this life-saving grace would eventually become a story of a farmer and a snake due to the current situation. After sending Hans away, Laszlo went to the market to buy things alone, but happened to see Ilona and Andras. Ilona was holding a large bouquet of purple flowers and standing with Andras in the sun, like a fairy couple. At this time, the two also found Laszlo in the crowd, and they all showed guilty looks, but Ilona still walked over and took the initiative to kiss Laszlo. Although Laszlo wanted to refuse, his body honestly responded, and this kiss also made Laszlo see the current situation more clearly. He understood Ilona's feelings for Andras and was willing to accept all of Ilona, so he decided to share Ilona with Andras. Because in his opinion, having half of Ilona is better than having none, and the other two also acquiesced to this way of getting along. So in the days that followed, the three of them got along in this strange and harmonious way. What's even more shocking is that the two men not only did not fight for the favor, but became very good friends. Of course, the happiest person is Ilona, because she has both a stable reality and a harmonious relationship. That day, a producer from a record company in Vienna came to the restaurant for dinner. Laszlo and Ilona both realized that this was Andras's opportunity, so Laszlo took the initiative to arrange the time for Andras to play the song Gloomy Sunday. At first, Andras didn't understand anything, but he still did it. In the end, the song was really liked by the three producers. Andras couldn't believe that he would have such an opportunity, but he didn't understand business at all, so he wanted to ask Laszlo to be his agent, and the remuneration would be 10% of his royalties. Laszlo, who heard this, smiled and told the other party that this was too hurtful, and that it was not allowed to charge money for helping friends. So after the restaurant closed, Laszlo discussed the production of the record with the producer, and with his shrewd mind and extraordinary negotiation skills, Laszlo won the highest royalties for Andras. Not only that, Laszlo also required that when the song was broadcast on the radio, it must be mentioned that it was created in the restaurant. In this way, Andras and the restaurant could both gain more fame, and the producers all agreed to these conditions. After the successful negotiation, the three were immersed in joy, but they didn't know what terrible consequences the advent of this song would bring. Soon after, the producer invited Andras to record in Vienna. Andras wanted Ilona to accompany him, and Ilona also wanted Laszlo to go with him, but Laszlo refused on the grounds that the restaurant could not be closed. Ilona and Andras went to Vienna together, leaving Laszlo alone and lonely. Although he was willing to share Ilona with others, he still felt deeply jealous occasionally, and this jealousy did not completely disappear until Gloomy Sunday was officially broadcast on the radio, and the name of Laszlo's restaurant appeared. To celebrate the successful release of the song, the three of them went to the rooftop to enjoy Budapest under the night sky while drinking leisurely. Laszlo sighed that this feeling was really good. As long as the song was playing, he could make money without doing anything. But Andras felt a little regretful, because even though he composed it himself, he still didn't understand what the song expressed. Laszlo advised him not to put too much pressure on himself, because musicians create with their hearts and emotions, and it doesn't matter whether they understand it or not. This was originally a comforting word, but Andras thought it was a humiliation, because in front of the rich and shrewd Laszlo, Andras has always been very inferior, so Andras deliberately said angrily that he was very sentimental, unlike you Jews who are full of business and have to bargain no matter what you do. Ilona watched the two men about to quarrel. Ilona wanted to ease the conflict between them, but didn't expect to draw the fire to her. If it weren't for you, neither of us would be like this, Laszlo said on the side, and Andras echoed on the side. Ilona didn't say a word, but left alone in anger. The two men who shared the same pain became better friends after a quarrel, and even slept in the same bed that night. When they met Ilona the next day, both of them expressed their apologies, but Ilona wanted to break up with both of them at the same time. Because she didn't want to make the three people unhappy? But how could the two men agree? Not long after, the three of them reconciled, and as Gloomy Sunday became popular throughout Europe, the restaurant's business became increasingly prosperous. That night, a group of celebrities came to the restaurant, and Andras also played the song himself, and people were fascinated by the whole process. One of the young and beautiful girls was deeply attracted by the beautiful notes. As the keys danced, her originally high spirits gradually became low, and her eyes were slowly covered with depression. Not only that, she chose to commit suicide by cutting her wrists when she returned home that night, and Gloomy Sunday was still playing in the room. Many people don't understand why a rich girl from a wealthy family would commit suicide. Perhaps she could only struggle like a bird in a cage, but could never escape. When Andras was suddenly interviewed by reporters, he learned that at least 5 people had ended their lives listening to his music, and he was filled with guilt. So Andras bought a bottle of poison, and planned to die to atone for his sins. Fortunately, Ilona also heard about the 5 suicides and knew that Andras would probably do stupid things out of guilt with his personality. So when Ilona saw that Andras didn't come to the restaurant, she immediately took Laszlo to look for him everywhere. Fortunately, she finally saw Andras's decadent figure on the bridge. In order to dispel Andras's idea of committing suicide, Laszlo and Ilona took turns to comfort him. When Ilona said that if we were to die, the 3 of us would die together, Andras finally smiled with relief. Laszlo took the poison away just in case. But in the following 8 weeks, more than 150 people in Hungary committed suicide after listening to the song. Meanwhile, World War II broke out, and the German Nazis were unstoppable. Hans, who returned to Germany, also joined the army, and Hans became an officer 3 years later. He came to the restaurant again after achieving success. When Laszlo recognized him, he was polite on the surface, but when he heard Laszlo calling him by his name, Hans still said arrogantly that if there were outsiders, he should call me Colonel. His arrogant expression obviously forgot that if it weren't for the other party's life-saving grace, he would not have been so glorious now. Not only that, Hans insisted on going into the kitchen to take a look, and then he played the piano in front of Andras unscrupulously. But 3 years ago, Laszlo told him that guests could not enter the kitchen or touch the piano. But now, Hans has become a villain. He just wants to deliberately break the so-called restaurant rules to prove that he is omnipotent now. Laszlo also knows how to judge the situation and silently cooperates with everything. In the evening, Hans brought his boss to the restaurant for dinner again. The boss recognized Laszlo as a Jew the first time he saw him, and their mission to Hungary this time was to carry out the Jewish elimination plan. However, they did not plan to do the mission tonight, but just wanted to enjoy the food and wine, so they did not leave until the restaurant closed. However, just as they walked out of the door, the boss bumped into Laszlo because he drank too much and did not stand steadily. The 2 fell to the ground one after another. Laszlo was innocent, but the boss did not ask for the truth. Not only did he punch and kick him, he even pulled out a pistol to shoot him. Only because Laszlo was a Jew. Fortunately, Hans stepped forward in time to stop him and saved Laszlo's life. At this time, Andras and Ilona, who had not walked far, also turned back. Because Laszlo was seriously injured, Andras decided to send him home. After sending the boss away, Hans was responsible for escorting the frightened Ilona back. Although they haven't seen each other for 3 years, Hans's obsession with Ilona has not diminished at all. As soon as Hans sent Ilona home, he couldn't wait to confess again. Being with an angel like her was not considered betrayal to his wife. Ilona couldn't accept the disgusting remarks, and Ilona chose to fight back with words. Angels are more conservative and won't mess around. Hans, who was rejected again, didn't get too entangled. He just happened to meet Andras, who came back when he went downstairs, so Hans deliberately tidied his clothes in front of him, as if he had done something. Andras, who was sensitive by nature, really believed it, so he didn't go upstairs, but walked straight outside with a little resentment. The next day, Ilona went to bandage Laszlo's wound. At this time, the news that the Germans wanted to get rid of the Jews had spread all over the country. The 2 also discussed how to deal with it. In the end, in order to keep the restaurant, Laszlo decided to transfer the restaurant to Ilona, who was not Jewish. After everything calms down, the 2 will restore justice. Although they are not married, they trust each other very much. In addition, in order to save Laszlo's life, Ilona decided to ask Hans for help to issue a certificate of Laszlo's conscription. But when she found Hans, Hans was dealing with a big thing. It turned out that the local Jewish rich businessman's property needed to be forcibly owned by Germany. If the rich businessman disagreed, then the whole family would be sent to the concentration camp. Almost everyone chose the former, because money was not worth mentioning compared to the safety of their family. After a long time, Ilona finally met Hans, and Hans also promised that Laszlo would be absolutely safe with him after hearing Ilona's request. But until the end, no paper certificate was issued, and Ilona was very happy that the matter was settled. So Ilona walked out of Hans's office briskly, but Andras, who was waiting outside, happened to see this scene. Andras asked her why she stayed in there for 57 minutes. Couldn't 2 men satisfy her? Facing the accusations and distrust of her lover, Ilona responded directly with a slap. That night, Hans brought people to the restaurant for dinner again. Perhaps he felt that he had Laszlo's life in his hands, or perhaps he wanted to show his superiority in front of outsiders. Hans's attitude towards Laszlo was no longer friendly, but became extremely arrogant. Even Hans asked Laszlo, a big boss, to tell him a Jewish joke. Although Laszlo was very resistant in his heart, as a businessman, he had to choose to keep quiet. Laszlo nervously told a joke about the concentration camp to satirize the narrow-mindedness of the Nazi officers. When he finished, Hans and his boss stared at him expressionlessly, and the people around him were too scared to speak. The cleverness of this joke is that if Hans gets angry, he will really become the narrow-minded officer in the joke. To save face, Hans can only pretend to be magnanimous. Sure enough, Hans and his superiors burst into laughter soon. Laszlo was frightened and broke into a cold sweat. He just breathed a sigh of relief, and Hans ordered Andras to play Gloomy Sunday. Hans wanted to trample on these two men in front of Ilona. But compared to Laszlo's smoothness and sophistication, Andras is more rigid and upright. He is unwilling to give up his dignity and serve people he hates. So after hearing Hans's order, he just looked at Hans stubbornly, but his body did not move, and Hans did not want to be outdone and confronted him. Seeing that Hans was about to lose patience, Ilona hurried to the piano and took out the lyrics that Andras had written for Gloomy Sunday not long ago and sang it. Andras couldn't believe his ears when he heard the singing, because Ilona had told him a long time ago that she would only sing when she was alone, and now, in order to prevent him from losing his life, Ilona had to go against her principles and bow to the powerful. This made Andras feel endless sorrow in his heart, but he still played the accompaniment at Ilona's request. Because the first morning after the two of them had their souls and bodies connected, Andras wanted to have this kind of soul communication with her. After the song, Hans was fascinated. Everyone present also applauded, and Ilona endured the discomfort in her heart and ran to the bathroom to calm down. But before she could recover, a sharp gunshot suddenly came from outside. When Ilona went over to check, she saw Andras lying in a pool of blood. It turned out that just before committing suicide, Andras finally realized the profound meaning of Gloomy Sunday. He also knew why more than 150 people took their own lives. Because compared to living without dignity and freedom, it is better to end your life decently. When he saw that his beloved was willing to condescend for him, Andras resolutely took the pistol from Hans and ended his life with his own hands. After Andras's funeral, Hans showed up in a car and wanted to show his deep affection in front of Ilona, but was pushed away by the other party as an executioner. Hans, who was unwilling to give up, asked Laszlo what he could do for Ilona. Laszlo wanted him to help get a pass so that he could escape this bloody storm. Hearing this, Hans's arrogant smile appeared on his face again. Hans said that as long as he was there, Laszlo would be safe, but the premise was that Laszlo must be obedient. After that, Hans assigned a task on the spot, which was to let Laszlo find some rich people in the Jewish community and then go to Hans to exchange tickets for life at a price of $1,000 per person. In just a few days, Laszlo saw clearly the fickleness of human nature in this chaotic world, and also saw through that Hans was no different from the officer in the joke, just using the power in his hands to do those inhumane things. After saying goodbye to Hans, Laszlo found Ilona and said that he seemed to understand the meaning of Andras's song. As long as there was a trace of dignity, he could survive all humiliation, but if someone poured a bucket of filth on Ilona's head again, perhaps leaving with dignity would be the wisest choice. In short, it would rather die than surrender. Ilona heard the hidden sadness in his words. She was also afraid that he would end up like Andras. So, Ilona gently comforted Laszlo and said that you are not alone, I am always with you. The happiness ahead is still worth your hard pursuit. The next day, the restaurant, which never rested, closed for Andras's death, and Laszlo began to send a steady stream of Jewish customers to Hans. Because this could save some Jewish lives anyway, sometimes Hans would take advantage of the situation and charge more. Sometimes he would pretend to be kind and return the money. The reason for doing so was not because of a change of conscience, but because he felt that if the situation changed one day, the confessions of these people might save his life at a critical moment. After sending off the last batch of customers that day, Hans opened the coffin filled with gold, silver, and jewelry. Inside were his spoils and the lives of many Jews. Soon after, Laszlo and Ilona received a bill of exchange. It turned out to be Andras's will, which stated that all the copyright fees from the songs would be divided equally between Laszlo and Ilona. At this time, the radio also came with a message that the Soviet Red Army had entered Hungary, which meant that the day of liberation was getting closer. Laszlo could not wait until that time because he knew too many secrets of Hans, so Hans put him on the death list after using him. Fortunately, when the German soldiers went to arrest him, he escaped under the cover of his neighbors, but he also knew that there was no possibility of survival in the face of absolute power. So Laszlo wrote a suicide note that day and hid it in the piano in the restaurant. Then Laszlo took out the poison that Andras had prepared to commit suicide before and wanted to leave decently before being arrested. But in the end, he was found by the German army first, and the poison slipped out of his pocket during the struggle. When Ilona heard the news and rushed to the restaurant, Laszlo had been arrested. The train was taken away. It was not until this moment that Ilona felt what despair was, but she still rode her bicycle to find Hans for help with the last glimmer of hope. At this time, Hans was packing his luggage to return to Germany. After learning about Ilona's purpose, he quickly said that he would definitely rescue Laszlo. He kissed Ilona while saying this. This time Ilona did not refuse him, and could not refuse, because this might be the only chance to save Laszlo. Afterwards, Hans really got a pardon from his boss, and went to the train station without stopping to submit the release document. Laszlo, who was about to board the death train, thought that Hans had a change of heart and came to save him. The hope of life was rekindled in his eyes. But the cruel thing was that Hans just looked at him coldly and then quickly rescued a math student from the death team. Professor, just because he is famous and will be more useful in the future. Just 3 years ago at the same train station, Laszlo, as Hans's savior, personally sent him on the train home. Now Hans has become Laszlo's executioner, personally sending him to the Auschwitz concentration camp, where there is no way out. At this time, Ilona, who had no idea, came to the restaurant alone, and not only found the poison bottle on the ground, but also found the suicide note left by Laszlo. In the letter, Laszlo said that he would not wait for the last bucket of filth to pounce on him, and Laszlo would choose to leave with dignity like Andras, but please hold on and wait for everything to pass. Although Laszlo failed to keep his dignity as he wished, Ilona listened to him and survived strongly. A few months later, the war was over and the restaurant reopened. Ilona came to Andras's tombstone again with a big belly. Now Andras's tombstone has been overgrown with grass, and Laszlo didn't even know where he was buried. Ilona told her about her longing for the two of them and promised that Hans was already dead. More than 50 years have passed in a flash, and Laszlo's restaurant still maintains the previous furnishings. But the boss has been replaced by a strange man who looks very similar to Laszlo. That day, the boss received news that a wealthy man from Berlin specifically wanted to hold his 80th birthday here. There is no doubt that this person is Hans. He made a fortune from the war and became the president of Germany's largest import and export company. He also used the people he saved to successfully whitewash him, turning him from a hypocritical and insidious Nazi officer into the biggest benefactor of Budapest. In order to show respect, the restaurant owner personally received him and ordered the kitchen to bring his favorite beef rolls when he was young. But even so, Hans still felt it was not enough, so he called the musicians to play Gloomy Sunday, and then he enjoyed the music while tasting the delicious food. Just when Hans was proud that his life was perfect, he suddenly saw the photo he took of Ilona on the piano, and then the scene at the beginning happened. Budapest Love is a love movie directed by Nov Schubel, Erika Morosan, and Joachim Kroll, which was released in 1999. Ilona has a peerless face and the most perfect love, because she is dating two lovers at the same time. One provides her with a material foundation, and the other enriches her spiritual world. It can be said that she has both spirit and flesh, but this world seems to be unable to accommodate a too-perfect life. Ilona's originally beautiful life was completely broken by the appearance of a third man. This man used the power in his hands to not only make Ilona lose the two men he loved most, but also made her feel unprecedented insults. But she did not choose to commit suicide, but avenged her lovers decades later. Well, today's movie sharing ends here. Thank you for your patience in watching. Welcome to like, comment, and forward. Looking forward to meeting you next time.